Awesome. Well, welcome back to Beyond the Box. I am again your host, Mike McCara, and I'm thrilled to bring on, I'm not even thrilled, I'm like stoked for today. Pumped to bring on a man I call friend, as well as a colleague, Ashkan Zandieh. Do I even say your last name right? Zandieh?
100% correct.
Amazing, amazing. Well, you are a jack of all trades. You are obviously an entrepreneur in residence, a strategic advisor with Second Century Ventures, among things. But I don't want to steal any thunder. So, Ashkan, for those who don't know you, what do you do? Who are you?
Who am I? I think that's the age-old question, right? It's maybe a deeper conversation, right? No, but
we got time. We got time.
For those of you that don't know me, I'm an EIR strategic advisor at NAR Reach, Second Century Ventures. Before that, I had a company called ReTech that I sold to ReTech or ReTech, which for those of you that don't know, they host some of the world's largest conferences in commercial real estate tech. And before that, I had a brokerage. I was at a brokerage firm called ABS Partners, and before that, an asset management company in multifamily called Promenade Associates. And before all of that, I was in the music business. And so I was an assistant A&R at Universal Records.
Very cool. So talk to me about this. So you're originally from New York?
Yep.
Originally from New York, in the music industry. All of a sudden, you find your way into real estate technology. Talk me through the journey.
Yeah. So the way I got into real estate was actually through my father. My father was running for a local NAR chapter, president of Long Island Board of Realtors, and he was campaigning, and he needed some boost, as he would say, right? And so, yeah, Dad, of course I'll help, and so I went and helped him with his campaign strategy. It's like whether you're a startup or trying to become a local chapter president, it's basic politics, and you have to have 3 talking points, and kind of narrowed it down to 3 major talking points. And he won, and he said, "Would you be interested in working, in real estate?" I said no, and then I kind of like was digging into it a little bit more. And I love the music business. I still have a lot of friends in the music business, but at the time, the music business was evolving. Technology was penetrating it very deeply, both as an innovation and also as a disruptor. And so I brought a lot of that kind of insight into real estate for him and his company. And so I joined his organization. I then worked for the family business as an asset manager at Promenade Associates. Wanted to learn more about the business. So then I'm always constantly evolving. So I don't like staying put. I'm very active. I'm the kind of person that has to have my fingers on the keyboard. Otherwise, I have to be active. And I talk a lot with my hands too. So those that are watching this. So what ended up happening, after maybe 2 or 3 years there, I then wanted to learn more about the commercial office side of the business. So then I became an office broker at ABS Partners. In between all that, I went to grad school, got my real estate license, became a licensed broker in New York. And then what ended up happening was it was really fascinating. When you're an office leasing broker, first of all, it's very entrepreneurial in nature, right? You are. If you're a licensed real estate practitioner, you're an entrepreneur, because the only way you make money is if you have sales. Like, that's it. Like, there is no venture capital for brokers. Like, doesn't exist. So you eat what you kill, and that's how that game works. And so I did that, but the only people that would talk to me were startups, sub 5,000 square feet. And so the only reason they would, because my friends were working for those companies. And so I started like working with them. None of the finance, insurance, none of those companies wanted to talk to me. Legal, forget about it. And so I focus on Midtown South. So for those of you that aren't familiar, it's like the tech corridor, the tech capital in New York City, Midtown South. And man, it was like a ride, man. I would work with, some of the coolest companies doing some incredible things. But what was really fascinating is, I would I had a map behind me in the office, and I would actually plot map basically all the buildings that I would be canvassing. And I noticed that all of the companies that I would be targeting that is up 5,000 square feet are all around this one building called 915 Broadway. 915 Broadway is a building that ABS operates, and that's where also Union Square Ventures was. Union Square Ventures was one of the first early stage VCs in New York City. And what was really fascinating is like, so I was like, I wonder if this theory holds true elsewhere. So I went and found another VC, and then I went to try to find all the other startups around it. And turns out that theory held true, and they all overlap. So basically a Venn diagram. And we're basically putting the law of dynamic density into play here for those sociologists out there. And so it was really fascinating to see. I was really excited. I presented those findings like a month later to our weekly team meeting, our internal team meeting, and nobody cared because everyone wants to talk about comps and transactional real estate and stuff like that. And what was really fascinating, the only person that cared was our head of PR. And he said, "Do you mind if I shop your memo around?" I'm like, "Sure, go ahead, shop the memo around." A week or so later, he calls me and says, "Hey, do you want to talk to people at Forbes?" I'm like, "About what?" He's like, "About your memo." I'm like, "Sure, go ahead." I spoke to them. He said, "Listen, we can't do anything with this. We love this thesis. We'd love to do something with this." And then turned into a report, and my life changed overnight. I was published in Forbes 6 months into my real estate brokerage career.
Wow.
And my life changed overnight.
Do you still have the article?
Of course, it's online.
But do you have a physical copy?
Of course I do.
Okay.
My parents would have found that, cut it up,
buy every copy,
framed it, like all parents do. It's wet. And I think the moral of the story here is that, this wet behind the ear 20-year-old kid with no knowledge of transactional office leasing experience all of a sudden gets this overnight success just because you looked at the world a little bit differently.
Well, and you were looking in a way that the data was there, but you're open to perceiving it. So then to take me through this. So you're a commercial broker. The memo goes out. Forbes is now there, and all of a sudden you're like, "Hey, I'm going to start this company called ReTech." Like, talk me through that.
No, so how that story comes about was all of a sudden all of these like startups started coming to me one by one, say, "Hey, love to demo for you and your team." I said, "Guys," and I got in like between CompStack, View the Space, which is now VTS, Honest Buildings, which got acquired by Procore, and like a laundry list of these companies were coming out of nowhere to ask, like my inbox literally filled overnight. Like I'm not even over exaggerating. It was crazy to see. And so I said, "Guys, instead of you guys coming one by one, what if we just like got everyone together and hosted a demo day, right? I'll invite all my friends and that are in brokerage and what have you, and we all can demo." So I spoke to this guy named Ben who had a company called Grind Space, which is a co-working company in New York. I'm not sure if they're even operational anymore. And we held it in Midtown. And I thought if I had like 50 to 100 people, I'll be a lot. No, we had like 600, 700 people there. Like it was insane to watch.
Need to order more coffee.
Yeah. And sandwiches and whatnot. And I was like, I think we have something here. Now how this story kind of came about was I was with this guy named Justin Bedicray. Justin was a co-founder of 42 Floors. He's a real estate guy from SF. And I said to Justin, like, "Justin, what should I call this thing?" He said, "Call it real estate tech." And I said, "Well, it's really, really long. It's like, you have to spell it out. It's really, really long." It's like, what if it's like our licenses, we can abbreviate real estate to RE. So we'll call it ReTech. That's what happened. And long story short here, we hosted this demo day. I had a report and I was using it as a way to get new business for myself. Right. But turns out this report was like really, really interesting to people because I was using at that time venture capital as a proxy. And even to this day, I use venture capital as a proxy for future innovation in real estate. At the time, I was using that as a proxy for future real estate growth for startups. And man, like it was so popular, people were asking about it. And between the time that Forbes article came out 3 or 4 months later, the Commercial Observer, or 6 months later, the Commercial Observer wants to do an interview with me. For those that aren't familiar, Commercial Observer is a commercial real estate trade publication in New York and now national. They asked if they could do a story on me. I thought it was gonna be like half a page thing. No, turned out it's like
paragraph. Yeah.
yeah. No, it turned out it's like a 3-page like expose with you on the cover, the photo shoot. I'm like, this is crazy. This is crazy. This is my first year in the business. Like, this is not normal. And so between that, this event, and a year later, I said, I think we have something here. So I left a really awesome job in brokerage. I said, I'm going to go all in on this idea. I want to launch a consultancy advisory group called ReTech. And we basically worked with institutional owner operators. We worked with VCs because at that point, they were all generalist VCs. And we work with a lot of real estate trade organizations like BOMA, ULI, NAOP, what have you. Like myself and a few other people, we co-founded ULI's Real Estate Tech Council in New York, which became the blueprint for national. So it was really, really fascinating to kind of see. And I think that, again, the moral of the story here, I think one, you have to be kind of always open to change and constantly like disrupt yourself, right? Like to basically future-proof yourself in your life and your business, you have to constantly be like, thinking of how am I gonna, the world's changing in front of me. What am I going to do? Am I going to adapt to this? Am I going, like, what am I going to do? Am I going to stand still? What am I going to do? So I was always of the mindset of just disrupt yourself for future growth. And that was it. And here we are.
So, okay. Wow. I think there's a few more steps on the story, but so then you're there. So you founded ReTech,
yeah.
Right? And things are going swimmingly well. And now, I think there's some overlap. You do some stuff with WeWork.
Yeah.
You at some point get acquired by ReTech. Talk me through the next few iterations of the story here.
Yeah. So ReTech, obviously, I mean, they're phenomenal at programming and events. The acquisition made complete sense because, the content in which we were creating was used to fuel financial decision making. And we continued down that path with the acquisition, but at this simultaneously, the content, because we were looking at any given time 8,000 to 9,000 Proptech companies globally, we use that information to fuel stage content and editorial content for their members and the ReTech audience. So I was doing that for about 2 years. The pandemic happened, and again, like how do you evolve yourself? How do you evolve your business? Who are you as an individual? I said, let's do something different that I haven't done before. And along the way, you have these interesting conversations with VCs that always want you to join their team, because basically I'm a researcher at heart, but I love actionable information, not just information for information's sake. That's when I joined SCV Reach. I spoke to Tyler. Tyler and I know I've been talking for a long time. I met Tyler at, funny enough, ReTech LA in person. We had a long talk on the sidewalk. And we just constantly just kept in touch. He's an awesome guy. And for me, like, it's about people, and I love working with awesome people. And even the companies I work with, even at ReTech or even at CRETech or whoever, I always never worked or turned down people that were just, quite part of my French here, assholes. Like, I never wanted to work with mean, miserable people. And so,
on that, like, I'm genuinely curious. So you've gone through an acquisition, you are a master network builder. What's your approach to relationships?
Oh man, we're in the relationship business, buddy. Like, this is it. Like,
including tech and VC, right?
100%. I think most entrepreneurs, where they fail is they're so focused on themselves. And I remember hearing Seth Godin, who's a master marketer, one time say, no one wants to get email. Everyone wants to get me-mail. And so I agree with that. People want to know, like, when you're reaching out to them or when you're communicating with them, whether digitally or physically, in person, what have you, like, everyone at some point wants to make it about themselves. So when you reach out to someone, how can you add value to them or for them, whether it's financial, emotional, what have you? You know what I mean? Like, and what is their love language, right? Like what do they want to see? In our world, in the venture capital world or in the real estate world, I mean, listen, like, everyone's a capitalist. So you have to, their love language is money and capital and finance. So that's the language you have to speak. So I think, understanding that, the way in which I communicate with people is, one empathy, one of understanding, and just be a good, and Bob, Gillespie one time said, regarding a story he was saying, he said, be a good hang. And so I agree with that. Like, I think people want to hang out with interesting people, genuinely great people. They want to communicate with those people, but at the same time, if those people can add value to them, absolutely, that's just an added bonus.
I remember talking through this, I had a lot of friends going to management consulting, and it's not an interview question, but one of the things that people always talk about is like, if I'm snowed in at an airport, right, do I want to sit next to that person, right? Because obviously travel is a big part of the road, and be a good hang. I think that's an equivalent statement, right? Like, because again, a lot of this stuff is lifelong relationships and lifelong deal flows. So answer, like, I'd be curious on your thoughts on this. As tech is sometimes considered a bit of an outsider when it comes to real estate, right? And they want to be the disruptor and they want to do that. Like, if you're a tech founder, like, how do you best immerse yourself into the ecosystem to give yourself the best chance of success? And is there any ways that like can help streamline that process, right? Because like, what if I have nobody in the ecosystem? Like, how do I get in?
Yeah, I think be a good listener. I think so many people, not just in real estate, just in general, want to pound their chest, be the loudest voice in the room. What has worked for me is that I like to listen to people's stories, and not speak out of turn, and not speak when it's not, it doesn't call for it. I think most of the time, I think as a startup, as a founder, you're looking for attention. And the way in which historically people try to do is be like the Perez Hilton of like real estate, and be the loudest voice on Twitter, be the loudest voice in the room. But the decision makers in real estate see through that very, very quickly. Anyone worth their salt in real estate can see that, and there's no way you're going to, outspeak, CEOs of these major real estate organizations. So for me, the way I've kind of done this, and it's just my personality, I love listening to people's stories, and then contributing when needed. I'll tell you a funny example that just happened a few weeks ago. So I'm flying back from ReTech, New York. I'm boarding the plane. I'm running late. I'm networking and I'm running late.
Not you. You're never late.
And I board the plane, and the person I sit next to is Bob Selenick from CBRE. For those that don't know who he is, he's the CEO of CBRE, the world's largest brokerage company, real estate services company in the world. And I said to myself, holy crap. And most entrepreneurs freak out. I certainly did. But and this is like all people, like they always like worried about what the first thing they're going to say is wrong. So the first thing I said to him was, your name isn't Bob, is it? That's the first thing I said to him.
Can't be wrong. And if you're wrong, I guess it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And he looks at me and says, yes, it is. I said, Bob, I'm Ash. And we just started, that's it. And we just started talking. For 3 hours, we were talking about things that he's interested in, because I'm genuinely interested too, because I'm really genuinely interested in his perspective on tech. For those of you that don't know, he just, CBRE recently acquired a stake in Industrious, co-working, flex office. I really want to hear. And how often do we have that opportunity? Because most of the time when they put out information in the media, it's always about, goes to a publicist, it goes to that marketing team, it's very edited. Like it is. And this is my first chance to get an insider's look into how CBRE thinks about flex, technology, and innovation. And boy, was it awesome. And boy, did I take that knowledge and weaponize that for our companies, because it was really awesome, man. Like I would have never gotten that.
So did you take notes while he was talking?
Yeah, it's all locked in my head. But yeah, and then you just kind of like, it's just fascinating. And to be honest with you, like, it's not like he said like 20, 30, 40 different things. I took away like 3 things from it. You know what I mean? Like, and if you act on one of them, you've made the right decision. You know what I mean? Like, it's like stock picking, right? It's like, you can't bet on all the best stocks in the world, but if you hit on one of them, every like 5 years, 10 years, a success, you know?
I love it. I love it. And I think that's a beautiful segue into, one of the questions that I'm sure you get all the time is, what is the commercial landscape looking for right now from tech? Like what is the hot button? Obviously people talk about COVID and back to work, but like when you're talking to people, what are people telling you?
Yeah, so I spend a lot of my time, obviously liaising with the entrepreneurial community, but also the real estate community. And by the real estate community, it's some brokerage, but is mainly owner operators, owner investors, and on the brokerage side, more institutional side of the business. And the world has evolved. So over the past decade, in commercial real estate tech, or just real estate tech in general, we've kind of seen this shift from like real estate 1.0 to what I call now 3.0. Real estate 3.0 is what we're calling, or what I call the financial amenification of the industry. And this is just, again, this is very general. There's some nuances by real estate sector and category, but for the most part, what we're starting to notice is that real estate organizations are caring less about tenant amenification because there's so many solutions out there, that there's less of a focus and a need for financial amenification and financial services and within the commercial real estate industry. We often hear about data, we often hear about AI, blockchain, tokenization, NFTs, and all that fun stuff. And those are all great points and great, conversations to be had. But from the real estate organizations I've spoken to, well, we're noticing this like shift to this financial amenification across multifamily, office, industrial, and what have you. Now, the interesting part, I know there's a question there, Mike, but like the interesting part here is that, again, it's very, very different from amongst the asset classes. The ones that are very tech forward real estate groups, obviously, are residential single family, residential single family rentals, very, very tech forward. Multifamily, which is approximately 5 years behind single family. Then you have office kind of in there, but the laggard of all of them is actually industrial. And so what was like real estate 1.0 in terms of the hotelification, if you will, the tenant experience, all that stuff that took place when you saw like co-working, co-living, flex, and these tenant experience platforms, you're now starting to see that in industrial. Whereas they've historically focused on transportation and logistics, now they're starting to care about what the experience inside their office, inside these facilities look like and feel like.
Love it. So then if we go back to the commercial side, can you give me an example of what the financial, what would you say, amenification?
Amenification. I made up a word there, I think.
I like it. I'm going to go with that. You know what? Let's use it.
Yeah.
Amenification, as in amenities, amenification.
Yeah.
Right? Give me some examples of financial amenification.
Yeah, I think you don't have to look too far. Within reach, we have, Otso, and you have ProDeal, right? So if you look at those two companies, Otso, like for an early stage tech company, and by early stage, let's make it very, very tangible here. Any company less than 500 people. Now, why 500 people? Because if you're less than 500, you're still considered small business. Anything larger become big business, right? From a tax perspective, actually.
Oh,
in the United States.
Yeah. There's that Canadian, hat that I'm wearing right there.
Yeah.
Sorry, what?
So this is like US, right?
Okay, gotcha.
So you're well, we make it even smaller, make it more tangible, like 10 people, 5 people, doesn't matter, right? The largest expense you'll incur when you're trying to occupy space is your security deposit. So, and this is something I knew as a broker, right? And you look at like a 5,000 square foot space, you're probably gonna, if it's like $1 million, your lease is like $1 million, right? You're looking at, anywhere between 10 to 20,000 in security, 30,000 security, depending on what it is, right? That's a lot of money for a company, right? And so, and to have that money locked away in a basically nonsensical interest-bearing account that's like accumulating pennies there, at the same time that capital could have been used for, operational growth. Simultaneously, on the landlord side, if the company defaults, you've spent all that money on the build out, you spent all that money on, on building out the space for the tenant, and it's way more than the security deposit. So you're losing money on the deal. So what what OSO does is it will financially secure your lease. So it helps the startup retain the capital needed for their financial and operational growth, while simultaneously providing maximum coverage for the owner as well.
Got it.
Another, and that they touch, office and other asset classes, retail and what have you.
Right.
Another company that I absolutely love is ProDeal, because they touch the institutional side so beautifully. Their institutional deal management platform, and I can't list their clients, but they're all institutional, not just real estate organizations, but financial institutions. Some of the world's largest, and just Google some of the world's largest financial institutions, you can see who they are, and can guess who their clients are. But they are answering a need for those organizations for better deal management and better deal tracking. And boy, it's incredible to kind of watch, man, because like the boring stuff is the sexy stuff that pays the bills.
So on that then, so if I've got a solution, and thanks for that, because that definitely clears it up. So if I have a solution and I want to go to an owner operator, what's going to be the best chance of success? Like, is it going and building up that grassroots case with like a few buildings, or is it going right to the top? And then and does it depend based on what the solution is? Like, where do I insert myself for maximum potential?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it depends on what kind of company you are, and what where in the stack you fall. Generally speaking, most companies touch the transaction side of the business, just given the exposure to that side of the business. I mean, most people want to focus on transactions because, hey, marketplaces, what have you. So I think this isn't a one size fit all model, but what I found to be successful is, top down, bottom up. And the reason I say, bottom up is because you need at least one person internally as your champion. And you need someone on the inside kind of rooting for you and kind of pushing it along internally. And that could be an analyst, it could be an associate, it could be a director, it could be anybody, right? But so that's one. I think at the same time, by the way, it's all about layers, right? So just like a real estate company or any company, there's layers to a company. Same thing here. So you have someone kind of championing internally, then you have someone else, maybe higher up, kind of pushing things along, right? Like, which is kind of great. And then you have the, bottom down approach. You eventually talk to the CEO, you get one shot.
You get on a flight. You get on a flight next to the CEO.
Yeah. And so but the thing is, when most entrepreneurs think they're ready for the C-suite conversation, in which they are not. And that's where companies fall short. They think they're ready for an enterprise-wide, company-wide, distribution. And this is when I said you have to be a good listener, because oftentimes they are not. They get one shot and they fail miserably. And everyone remembers the last thing you said, or in this case, everyone remembers the last experience they felt. So if the experience fell short and it was less than stellar, well, chances are they're not going to onboard you, or if they do, they're going to be very, very cautious. I like pilots, whether they're paid pilots or what have you, but I like kind of, throttle kind of the relationship, kind of going slow, build the relationship. It takes a little while to do it. Again, this is on the institutional side, right? Like on a large case side. And then kind of build out your relationship, because along the way, you meet so many awesome people and you build out your network, and you start having this awesome network effect where people start talking about you on LinkedIn and Twitter and all these other social platforms. And people actually start genuinely caring about you because you have these fantastic touch points with them. And this is just part of the process, right? You're just constantly like talking to people to get their opinions rather than sell. I think that's where most companies also fail, is that they're constantly in the selling mode, not in the listening mode. You have to be a great listener and also be a great seller. And the way I sell is just being a great marketer.
So on that then, like, let's talk a little bit about pilots, because I think a lot of people throw that around, and, something that's always it's a challenge for startups or tech companies, scale ups, call them what you will, revenue, right? You're always, because you've got a runway to deal with.
Yeah.
And you've got salary and overhead to pay, and you're either raising new venture capital or you're generating revenue. So like what advice would you give when you're starting to think about pilots as it pertains to the revenue lever? Like, what am I really trying to get out of a pilot? And is it revenue? And then at what stage does it transition from like a data gathering to like, okay, this could be a big deal for me and I can, stop worrying about my venture financing?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that's a great point. I think what's really fascinating there is that most companies, when they think about pilots, it's about the sell. Again, it's not about the sell. It's about building trust. What you're trying to do is build trust. Like most people, like this is a real estate thing. If you ask most real estate people what business they're in, they say, "Oh, I'm in the relationship business," or "I'm in the information business." This is all wrong. You're in neither of those, and neither is a startup. The business you're in is in the trust building business. Because there is no deal that ever died because of lack of capital. If anything, there's so much liquidity out there, so much capital out there, you can always go get alternative sources of capital to help fund your deal, right? But deals have 100% of the time died because of the lack of trust. And the same thing applies here. The whole point of a pilot, at least for me, has always been to build trust. And I want to, cultivate a strong relationship. I want people to feel good about being in business with me. I want people to feel good, like speaking with me, that all I care about is building trust with them. And so I think focus less on the capital, focus more on the individual, adding value, build trust within the relationship, and the rest will take care of itself.
I love it. And like, I'm just taking a moment to have that soak in, because one of the things that, we had in my past life, we had talked about was this circle, and, you do this, which builds predictability, which builds dependability. And the last step was, which builds to trust. And what trust derived was repeat and referral business.
Yeah.
Right. And in this case, a referral would be, hey, we did this great pilot, you guys should try it. A repeat would be, let's try this, but let's scale it bigger. And now let's talk dollars and cents. And so to me, I think that's just, it's a really hard concept, I think, for entrepreneurs to wrap around, which again is a nice transition. Like, what are the top 5 things you think any entrepreneur in the real estate tech space needs to know, but going in, and they need to be mindful of? And if it's not 5, that's okay. But like, what are the top things that like they should keep revisiting outside of, go to market and marketing and product? Like, what are those more maybe higher level things that they need to have top of mind?
Yeah, these are great questions, by the way, Mike. I think most entrepreneurs, they think about internally, and again, it's not about email. They want to get me mail. I'm going to use, for those that don't know, there's a company called Cove, and Adam Siegel is a great entrepreneur founder. He's such a great human being that people genuinely love the guy because he's such a fantastic, helpful person. And as a result of it, he gets so much business. People, like, he's the best kept secret in tenant experience in office. People don't even realize it. Like, all those tenant experience platforms that are out there in office, he's taken all their business and people don't even seem to realize it. And he has some of the world's largest office owners working with him and actively helping him. Like, the CEOs of these organizations are helping him, working with him, because he's such a great human being. Now, I think looking at Adam, I say to myself, okay, what makes Adam such a great entrepreneur? I'm going to split this. This is not in a ranking order,
sure,
but things that like really look really, that I think he does really, really well. I think one is, again, be a great hang, be around people, listen to them, and then weaponize that information in which they have told you for your financial benefit. That's one. The second is, again, no ranking order here. I think most entrepreneurs think about financial growth. And so they think about their ARR, their CAC, and all that stuff. I always tell them the same thing over and over again. If Uber doesn't care about their CAC because they're giving away free rides and free lunches and dinners, neither should you. Okay, that's one. Those two by themselves are great ways to help build your moat, because we often hear about entrepreneurs and in the venture capital world, like, what's your moat? I think the first one helps build brand, because being a great hang, being a great listener, being a great person is directly correlated to your brand, and a brand is a moat. McDonald's has kind of proven that out. I think financial resourcefulness is actually another good one. I think most entrepreneurs, even when they raise, like, it takes money to make money. That's not true. Absolutely not true. You just need great execution. So I think being able to look at your balance sheet, be very pragmatic about it, and actually execute against that, I think is the utmost necessity, because it shows to an investor that you genuinely care about their money, right? Like, when you're raising venture capital, it's like most VCs, generalist VCs, like, will say, oh, go, it's part of your burn. Well, no, be very mindful of your burn, and the market will reward you. It's just how it is, right? So I think that's more than three we just mentioned there, but like,
that's a lot of great advice though, and I love
it.
So yeah, no, that I don't want to put a limitation on this.
Yeah, no, I think it's a lot, to be honest with you. But if I had to rank it to, like, if I had to think of, like, three, the last one, what not to do. I think it's equally more important than what to do. I think there are some entrepreneurs out there that are very sensitive to feedback. One, don't take it personally. It's okay for people to have feedback. If anything, take that information and you'll quickly learn who's your customer and who's not your customer, what to improve on, what not to improve on. One of the, this is a personal thing that I went through. When I launched my company, I was getting all this feedback from, like, how to monetize. And I took, funny enough, advice from family members on how to monetize. And it was the worst decision I ever made. It was absolutely the worst decision I made.
Do you still tell them that?
Oh, absolutely. It was like, it actually stunted my growth for 6 months. A little less than 6 months. It was like a quarter and some time, but it's ended my growth. And I'm like, this was horrible. And so I think take people's advice, take it with a grain of salt, but do your due diligence on the pricing, do your due diligence on customer acquisition strategies, do your due diligence on PR marketing growth. Because most entrepreneurs, they want to be famous, not rich. I'd rather be rich than famous. That's kind of, and that's the reality of it, right?
Totally,
like,
yeah.
I mean? Like, they want to be LinkedIn famous. And I'm like, don't be LinkedIn famous, be famous for being rich. Like, Warren Buffett's famous for being wealthy as all hell. He doesn't actually actively seek out PR. Nick Ramiro doesn't actively seek out PR, but because they do so well financially and people love them, they build trust and what have you. Like, these are great examples of companies that get attention because of who they are and what they do versus the other way around.
I love it, man. We could talk all day, but I want to be mindful of your time. So I only got two last questions, and they should be pretty easy. So okay. The first one is, you see a ton of tech, and you've got amazing relationships, and the real estate industry inside and out. What are you most excited for in the next, year and a half?
This is a non-technical answer to your question.
I'm not a technical guy, so
I am really excited about the entrepreneurial class or the entrepreneurial community. The industry has shrunken tremendously. We went from 5 years ago to 1,000 plus new companies launching every year to, I think this year, maybe 100 or less this year. I think what's becoming very, very interesting in our space is that the barrier to entry is getting higher. Domain expertise is becoming mandatory, and you can no longer be a generalist walking into this space thinking you're a jack of all trades or know-it-all and think you're going to succeed. And so what I get really excited about is starting to see real estate people getting into the space, and also seeing technical people collaborate with real estate people to create new technology and solutions, whether it's software, hardware, services, what have you. So that's, I get really excited about that stuff, because what that tells me is that the success rate is going to be higher. What's a running joke in our business, in our industry? The path of success for a startup is littered with dead bodies of startups that along the way. And that's so true, but it doesn't have to be if the barrier to entry becomes higher. And you see that more in the residential space because it touches the consumer, but on the commercial front, it's less and less and less.
Those would be an easy one. That's awesome, man. I love it. Okay, so this is the last question. So you're obviously a New Yorker through and through.
Yeah.
But you've now found yourself out in Texas. So I gotta ask you, is it New York pizza or Texas barbecue? Like what?
Oh man, doesn't even compare. Come on. I'll tell you something. Like around here, a bunch of New Yorkers have opened up shop here from the Bronx, from Brooklyn, what have you. They've opened up pizza shops around here. Now it's not as good as New York because you don't have that New York water. But fun fact, these are things that I learned actually from being here. 70% of Texas water is recycled. Which then you look at, it's like, well, from a startup perspective, how does that impact the built environment? So my real estate brain always, innovation brain is constantly working, right? And it's like, oh man, interesting opportunity there. But dude, come on, New York pizza, come on.
Okay, so on that, if you want to learn more about New York pizza, real estate technology, or generally just connect with an amazing human, Ashkan, what's the best way for people to connect with you?
Oh, LinkedIn, every day, all day, every day. It's I'm really active on LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. It's a great community. Yeah, follow me. It's linkedin.com/in/A Zandieh, which is AZANDIEH.
The fact that nobody knows their URL. It's been a pleasure, man. Thanks so much for coming on the show, and really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
See ya.